So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. So the webinar today is about using your Energy Spark system to get your heating set up right, but we're also going to do quite a lot of sort of general, hopefully kind of sensible advice on your heating systems as well. So quick introductions to the two of us. So my name is Nikki. I am the Senior Energy and Carbon Consultant for Energy Spark. So I deliver training like this and directly to schools as well on how to use Energy Sparks. I also deliver virtual energy audits, so talking to schools about what's going on. So you've got 5 boiler rooms and what's going on in your school, and putting that together with the Energy Sparks charts and analysis, and trying to work out a plan of action for how to spotting issues. I work with schools to spot problems with their energy use and also look for patterns across the whole database. So we've got over 1,000 schools, try to spot what's happening, what's working, what isn't, to sort of share those messages. Richard, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, very quickly, we're a small CIC, community interest company. We've worked with Energy Sparks for years and years. We love each other, I think, because we complement each other really well. I do a lot of energy audits in schools. I'm also a bit of a data analyst from my IT days, so I love it to bits. And I think I'm nearly up to 300 schools across the country. So from a nursery school all the way up to big colleges with 9 boiler rooms, even, Simon. Yes, very complicated. I've learned a lot from everyone, which is great. And hopefully I'll share some of that knowledge today.
Brilliant, thank you. And do feel free to add your own introductions into the chat box as well. So there's a little icon at the top to say chat, and then it'll appear on the right hand side of your screen. There's probably too many of us to really do kind of round the room introductions. Will be here for the whole period. But yeah, let us know if there are any particular problems that you're facing, and we'll try to get round to all of them. And also, because there are quite a lot of us, having those sort of live discussions might be a bit tricky. So what's going to happen now during this time is that Richard is going to keep an eye on questions. I will try to as well, but I get very easily distracted. And he will sort of stop me to ask questions if they're appropriate at particular times, or we will come back to them at the end if that's easier. So we'll have a bit of a Q&A session at the end. If there are any that get, are very specific or very kind of long-winded and difficult to answer, we might have to come back to them afterwards. We'll answer them in an email. So please do make sure, as I mentioned before, if you can change your name to something that we will definitely know who you are, so that we can answer them directly to you. That would be brilliant. And then the other thing as well, just so I'm going to keep you all, well, actually I don't have that much control, but generally if you can try to stay muted if you're not directly asking questions, just so we don't get lots of odd feedback. We are recording this session as well, so we will put it onto our YouTube channel. So if you would rather that your question wasn't included in that Q&A, if you feel like it's a bit of an embarrassing question, just wait until the end and we'll switch the recording off. That's absolutely fine. I'm just going to let somebody in quickly. Okay, letting people in. So just apologies if I kind of stop every now and then to let people in. It'll probably stop happening soon, but I had to let that one in because that's one of our regular, who was it, Matt, from Gospel Oak. So we talked to him quite a lot about various things in his heating system. So an outline for today. So this is aimed at anyone who has some responsibility for a heating system in a school. So some of it might seem really obvious to a seasoned site manager or caretaker, but hopefully even someone who's been working at their school for many years will hopefully share something that can help you save a bit of energy, or even just make your job a little bit easier. So the purpose of today's training is to help you get your heating set up right, ready for winter, in a way that will minimise waste. We're not going to go in huge detail of like how Energy Sparks works, but and there are lots of regular sessions that you can join, but I will navigate around the site a little bit later on and show you what are the key things that will show you things to do with your heating. We're focusing mostly on what you can do with an existing heating system, so by monitoring, making changes to controls, also looking at keeping records of how things are set up, making sure that you're sharing information with heads and business managers. And we're going to talk about a few schools that we've worked with who've managed to make improvements as well. If we have time, we'll do a little bit of forward thinking, what schools need to do to be ready for the future. And we'll start talking about how important it is to understand your schools. So every school is going to be different. Every heating system is going to be a bit different. So we do have to be relatively general today, but hopefully you'll get something out of it. So the majority of the session is going to be slides. I will send them to you after the session's finished as well. But I will also go onto the site and show you kind of how to navigate around a little bit as well. This is a really good start, isn't it? Losing my voice right from the beginning. Note as well that at the moment, most of the heating analysis on Energy Sparks is aimed at schools that have gas boilers. So that is, it's generally easy for us to get half-hourly metered gas data. You can't really get that for biomass or oil. But also it's much easier to separate out heating from everything else. So with electric heating, it's much more difficult to say, this is your heater and this is this is the lights, or anything else as well. But a lot of that's the analysis, but the advice in general is going to be pretty is going to be useful whatever kind of heating system you have. Note that so we are also really trying to gather more information about how to manage and monitor from sort of our analysis perspective, heat pumps, as more and more schools are getting heat pumps now. So if you do have a heat pump or are going to have one soon, please do make sure that we're aware of it, so we can keep that in our records and we can keep kind of monitoring what's happening with them as well. We have run a couple of other webinars in the past with some heat pump engineers who've been able to give us some really good advice, and I will send you all a link as well, pop that into the slides later so that you can look at that if you want to. So we've got a big picture here. This is a quick reminder of why we're here and why it is so important. So often the job of keeping a school warm is, it's given, so it's passed down to someone when someone leaves, or it's handed over when there's a new school built or anything like that. And there's often very little handover. And generally, in the past at least, very few sort of low expectations of, let's just not mess this up. Here's the system that you've been given. Don't ruin it. Don't break it, don't change anything or change the status quo or anything like this. But things do change over time. So systems break, systems go wrong, or are developed, or you get a new system, energy prices rise, the climate crisis worsens. So the expectations on those people with controls are getting higher. So this is the big picture of what we're looking at. So a well-controlled heating system will make people healthier, happier, create a better learning environment. If it's too cold, people aren't happy, and some people may well be unwell as well. If it's too warm, students don't learn very well. And I know personally from my children's school, I struggle to stay awake in the school plays because it's absolutely boiling in there, and not because of the plays themselves. Using a tool like Energy Sparks will give you the confidence to make changes to heating settings. So it can give you an idea of how to prioritise things that you need to work on, how much you might save by taking certain actions, and help you to communicate those things as well. Communicate about what you're trying to do, or with someone else who's trying to make you do something else. So it might be that you can demonstrate to them this is not possible because access to data can give you a much clearer picture, back up your arguments as well. So it can come in a few different forms. It's not just what we're telling you on Energy Sparks, but also monitoring temperatures around the school, noting which areas are hardest to heat, or regularly overheat as well. Those are all useful bits of information to keep and to communicate with people. Emissions as well. So emissions from a school's heating system make up one of the largest bits of a carbon footprint for a school that you can directly influence. So it's much more difficult to persuade everyone to walk or cycle to school, or to influence the carbon footprint of your school dinners or school uniforms. but you personally can make a difference to how much energy is used by your heating system, and those changes can happen immediately. So there's very little in terms of policy change that's needed. You know, government policy takes years and years to make any changes. Sometimes even trust and local authority level can take a long time. There's no kind of investment needed, or very little, or business cases and things like that. You can just make a change today and see it tomorrow. And then finally, and this is quite a big one, energy use is expensive, and it could be the deciding factor in whether someone has a job. So it's a big one, and that's a lot of pressure to put on your shoulders right now. But we've had schools saving over £1,000 in a year. Sorry, over £30,000. I can't even read my own notes. Over £30,000 we've had schools saving in a year. Just this week, I heard from one of my colleagues of a school that they know that has lost a TA because of rising energy prices. It wasn't an Energy Spark school, but that doesn't mean it can't happen to everybody. So serious note, and then we'll move on. But so today is about heating, but there's lots of other places that you can find information. So I'm not going to go into loads of detail about how to use Energy Sparks. I'll put my little pointer on. But we run lots of free online training. You can find them, or you can book them on here. We have user guide videos and help pages. You can also sign up to newsletters and alerts. So we will send you the newsletters will send you sort of seasonal advice. This is what you can be doing right now. This is a part of our website that is useful right at this moment. And then alert emails will tell you if something is happening in your school right now. Consumption has gone up. Let's investigate this. And you can sign up to those. There's a little sort of person icon in the top right hand side of your account when you're logged on, and that will let you sign up to those as well. Lots of other things in there. So as I said, I will send you round the slides, so all of these links will be available to you. If you don't feel, I know this is a lot of information, please don't feel like you have to read every one of these, but if you feel like there is something odd going on in your school, you're looking at the spikes, you just cannot understand what could possibly be causing them, do contact us. That's absolutely fine. And that is one of the sort of bits that we don't shout about enough, really, I think, in Energy Sparks, is that we're always here. So you can either contact me directly, you'll have my email address at the end of this, or you should have had an email recently from your sort of account manager who looks after the data for your school. So you're very welcome to get in touch with us at any point. I'll just have a little sip. I've already been talking for too long. This is not a good sign. And another thing, I am going to get onto the real the real details soon. But another thing that I think is really important is to think about prioritizing our efforts. So people working in schools generally are very busy, completely overwhelmed by all of the things that are on their shoulders. So making sure that when we're talking about sustainability or energy or any of these things, that we're not just kind of doing the fluffy stuff around the edges, the things that everyone says is sustainability. So let's do the things that make a difference. But remember that even, we're talking about heating, but even in a sort of perfectly insulated school with beautifully controlled boilers, you can still have high energy consumption. So it may be that you end up finding there's something else that's causing that. So you'll often find that the job of sustainability or reducing energy use is just one person's job, but across the whole school, working together can make it much easier and make it much more successful. So this table is something, if you can click on the button that's called Energy Saving Opportunities on your dashboard. You'll find lots of these kind of half links because each school has a different link, so I can't give you a direct link on the slides. It'll take you to a table that is called Prioritised Opportunities. And this will tell you the things that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. What is the thing that is going to save you the most money or the most carbon dioxide? So obviously, getting your heating is really important. But what you'll find is that electricity is much more expensive than gas. Electricity is much more expensive than gas. So reducing the electricity use is going to save you the most money. Gas has a higher carbon footprint. So reducing your gas consumption will have a bigger impact on that. But on the whole, gas can be reduced relatively quickly. So it's you people in the room today can make changes to your boilers relatively quickly. And although although I'm telling you it's not going to save you as much money, it can be done immediately. You can be saving from today rather than this sort of big behavioural change thing. Every single person, every single appliance in the school, investigating lots of things. You can just change the boiler settings. You might have 5 boiler rooms, but it's still 5 instead of every single room in the school or something along those lines. And then obviously, if you have a sort of more modern or like a big school, a heating system will often use a lot of electricity as well. So you'll have your gas to heat the water that's circulating around the school, but you've probably got quite a lot of electricity from air handling units or circulating that heat around, or ventilation as well. So getting your heating timings and temperatures and things like that right can also have a big knock-on impact on your electricity and therefore save lots of money. So let's start now talking about the real thing. And I know this is a really busy slide, but essentially what we're saying here is get to know your system, get to know your school, and if you don't know things, then find out. And if you do know them, write them down, because you may not be here forever. You may not be the one that is doing all of the work forever. So it's also really important that you're documenting it so other people can share the load, can help you out with this stuff as well. So doing something like a heating audit or inventory is a really useful exercise, particularly this time of year. It's useful. You're kind of getting things ready for the winter. So let's start on this left-hand side, management side of things. So write everything down. We've got this link down here to a comprehensive review of boiler control settings. So that is it's just a document basically that you can take and do what you want with. So we've written down particular questions that we thought were important at the time. You may well think, actually, I need to record this and this. So make a copy for yourself, do whatever you want with it. It is yours, it's a template, but it's really useful to be able to record all of those things. So think as well about who controls your heating, who has control. Is it entirely in your hands, or do you have a trust central team or a local authority team or an external management company that has to control your boiler? So if you do need to call an external company or local authority to make changes, how do you contact them? Do they charge for their time as well? Is there a limited number of times that you can make changes to settings in a particular year? I'll just let somebody in. Yeah, so if there's a limited number of times that you can call them, what do you need to do about that? Again, write all these things down. If you're the only person that knows this and you go off on on leave or on on sick leave or something, then there might not be anyone who can help with this.
So Nikki, can I just interrupt quickly?
Absolutely.
Just been asked, we are sharing all of these slides after
Yes.
the presentation. Absolutely. So don't worry, they will get to you. I know some of these slides will be busy because we want to get information on the slides so that when you review it another day in the future, it will spark your memory. It will remind you of all the things we talked about.
Yeah, so I am breaking all of the presentation rules here because I put loads of information. I know you're not meant to do that, but actually I want these to be a useful document for you to take away afterwards.
And is it a good time to actually mention Simon's query about got 5 boiler rooms, none of the BMSs seem to work? And
Yes.
it's actually this bit you're talking about is to get to know your BMSs or your heating system, however it's set up. But actually with the heating engineer, try and go through all the different controls on your BMS. What does that do? What will that control? What should it control? And if you're not sure, then maybe try it out. So say you don't think the boiler timings are coming on the right time, you could set it to come up at 2 a.m. in the morning for an hour, and you can use the Energy Sparks data to see whether it worked or not, if it's peaking, see whether it's working. Because I don't know whether, Simon, you mean, I know how it's supposed to work, but it isn't, is a bit different to, this is just too complicated and not sure what's supposed to be happening at what time. So this bit is all about find out what it should do. But if it's not working, then I think you need to sit with your heating engineer and work out. And I've been to quite a few schools where it just isn't working the way that it says it should. Only recently, the heating's supposed to be off. That's what it said in the BMS, but my thermal camera proved otherwise. Because that's what happens, things break.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that brings us on to the annual servicing. So as Richard says, sit down with your engineer, and maybe keep a list of issues. So as you go through the year, make sure you write down those things that are bothering you. Like when you come to buying Christmas presents and you haven't written down all of those good ideas through the year, same thing. Write those things down, all those questions as they come to you. If you only see somebody once a year, you need to have those things on there.
And that's really important, Nikki, because this guy last week said, if I call out the heating engineer, he's going to charge me 500 quid, which took my breath away just to bring somebody out. So if you've got a standard maintenance meeting, that's when you have all your questions.
Yeah. But also you can use your Energy Sparks account to work out if it's worth it. I'll show you a few slides later. But if you can see that your heating is coming on at midnight every day when you think it should be coming on at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, you can use your Energy Sparks account to say, well, how much does that cost me over a year? If I can change from midnight to 5 and it costs me and it's costing me £800 to heat the school at that point, then it's worth spending that £500 to get them out. Then that's a useful thing to know. I can see I've got a question from David. So getting SLT on board is really difficult. Everyone claims to be carbon conscious, but it's not always the case. They only switch on when they're cold and have no money. Yes, so getting SLT on side, I think this is a really important thing, and making sure that I think sometimes it's not just about getting them on side to do the things, but talking together about, and I know I can say this from a distance, about why all of these things are important. So making sure that they understand that doing this will save this much money or this much carbon, and not doing it will cost this much, and also putting the ball in their court a little bit more about communication. So if it can be, rather than everyone in the school coming to you and saying it's cold, you need to put the heating on, being able to defer to SLT and saying, right, senior leadership team have said this is the rule. We only put the heating on when it gets below a certain temperature, or we only heat up to a certain temperature. Then it's not your problem anymore. It's their problem, their decision. It's a sort of strategic thing. Also being able to communicate things like that around the school. So if you can get them to see that fiddling with a thermostat costs £1,000 a year, then they can communicate that around to all the staff and have those conversations. But like you say, it may not be an easy task to get them on side, but if you can hit them in the money rather than the carbon, that might be the way to do that. On the skills point as well, about making sure that you've got the skills. So if you've been handed a new system, often the handover is not particularly good, particularly like a brand new system. Here's a new school, it's super efficient, go. They're often set up just to be warm enough so that no one complains, but not necessarily cool enough so that people can learn, or is spending an absolute fortune on your energy. And sometimes you get just handed, this is an efficient school, and then when you look at it, it's not really. So it's really important to have that handover. And if you don't, then what can you do to get it? So are there training courses that you should be going on? Are there heating engineers that you should be paying to come out to give you that training, or to set up the system better? Are there manuals that you can be downloading or purchasing or something? It is very likely that a day of training is going to be less costly than wasted energy. So those are sort of some things to think about. The only thing that is not, what I didn't write on there, is if you have, so it's completely sort of on a side, if you have the little CD for your BMS, do not ever lose it. So the little CD that comes with it that says that sort of does all the programming, it can cost many thousands of pounds to replace that or get a new one, or reprogram your system if you don't have it. So make sure that is kept really securely with your systems. I'm just going to have a quick look at the questions. Anything in there, Richard, that you've already spotted?
Yeah, it's a good point made by Paul. I know that quite a few schools I've visited, they try and keep the heating off until half term in the autumn. That can be tricky. A couple of weeks ago, we had some lovely sunny days, but it came with 5 degrees in Yorkshire when I was visiting schools there. It's difficult not to have the heating on when it gets that cold, but at the moment, decent weather, it's what, 11 in the mornings, you might get over that bump of a bit of coolness before the heat, which is generally a lot of body heat in a school, warms the school up enough. So if you can, try and last as long as you can towards half term. And I know some schools would just turn it off at Easter, don't care, it's not coming back on till the autumn. So if you can get away with that hard and fast rule, and I know you need your backup from your principal, your head teacher, your SLT to do that, but you will make a lot of savings if you keep to that.
Yeah, thank you. And then moving on to the sort of the system itself, just making sure that you understand what is making my system, my heating come on and off. So is it, so ideally you want a combination of timers and thermostats. Richard, you're going to say something?
No, there was a point being made saying that if the head teacher's bombarded with teachers saying, I'm cold, I'm cold, I'm cold, that they can cave in. And yeah, I've been to schools where that happens. It takes a strong head teacher to do that, to actually turn around and say, can you put a jumper on? Look at the weather outside. And we say that to our children. Why don't we say that to our staff? And I know a lot of site managers out there are saying, yep, absolutely. As long as that you're given leeway to actually tell people what they don't want to hear, which is dress for the weather outside. Because that
also,
way you go on.
Sorry, very often as well, we're trying to have the school like lovely and warm for the single teacher sitting in their classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if it is warm enough, and I know this is awful to say to a member of staff, but if it's warm enough for them, chances are it will be too warm by 10, 11 o'clock. And then that's when all the windows open and the doors open and the heat just goes out to the world. So if we can get people dressing warm at those early points, once there's 30 people in a class, it's going to be plenty warm enough.
Yeah, I did an assembly. It was 19 degrees when I started the assembly. Half an hour later, when I finished it, and there's about 300 kids in there, it was 23 degrees in a big hall. Just gives you an idea how body heat can, and there's no heating on, so that was just pure body heat.
Yes, I can see Paul has written as well using the CO2 and temperature sensors. I've got a point on that in a later slide, but yeah, absolutely. So making sure that you've got additional sort of visible temperature sensors so that you can talk to people about that and you can make sure that it is definitely warm enough. I like the thing from Matt Clapham as well about we state that temperature is colder and not cold. That's a good one, I think.
Yeah. Space is cold, the sun is hot. That is not the case in our schools.
There you go. But yes, so thinking about your timers and things, so making sure that you know what is the thing that's going to trigger it. So is my timer for my school for my heating, is it a sort of on-off timer, goes on at 6, goes off at 3, or is it an optimum start, an occupation time? So is it about it needs to be warm between 9 and 3 rather than the other way? So we often find when schools have occupation times that it doesn't work. So the idea is that it comes on earlier when it's colder so that it's warm enough for the time when occupation starts, but often we'll find that either it doesn't work very well, so thermostats can be in really leaky bits of the school so it's just always cold in that corridor, or people don't realize that it's occupation times and put in they do that calculation themselves. Okay, so I want it to be warm by 9, so I'll put the heating on at 7, and your boiler goes, you want it warm by 7, I'll put it on at 3. So that's really common. So yeah, so those sorts of things it often just doesn't work quite so well. So it's just you can use your Energy Smarts to check that these things are working, and I will show you that later. So, and if everything is controlled manually, if you do have a system where you have to come to school and switch it on, things like that, make sure you've got people backing you up on this as well. So if do you have a plan for the future to put to improve those controls? That generally is a good investment to have, particularly if you say, well, if I'm not doing it, who's going to do it? That's a good question to ask. And zonal controls as well, so being able to heat different areas differently really generally again is a good thing to invest in, and particularly if you have a lot of external use of the school. So if you have people in their weekends and holidays, it's good to be able to just heat those areas and not the whole school for those. Thermostats, I think we have talked a bit about thermostats as well, but just understanding what sort of thermostats they are. So are they just the temperature in the room? Are they return flow thermostats? Can people fiddle with them as well? So that's an important thing. So and then the frost thermostat is an important thing to remember, is that first of all, making sure that it works. We do find some of these are a bit overzealous, a bit keen. So make sure it is working. Again, you can use your Energy Sparks account to check, is it coming on, you know, when it's not that cold outside. Where is it? Is it in an area that is miles away from any pipes or bit of school, but actually is always freezing cold? Is it on the annual maintenance check as well? So that's an important thing, just to make sure that people are checking on it.
Can I do a very short story?
Of course.
The reason, okay. So just after COVID, when we could get back into schools and do energy audits, I went to a lovely college secondary school. They said, look, we're burning through the gas. We've got a really good BMS, and they had. What's going on? So just after COVID, people were still adhering to ventilation. So I was walking around, noting that window's open, that door's open, that window's open. Yeah, they were all open. And they asked the BMS to get the school to 21 degrees. So you can imagine it was working really hard to do what it had been asked to do and get it to 21, whilst a lot of the heat was just exiting out the windows and the doors. So I just told them, it's fine, but don't make it 21, make it 18, and that will save you an awful lot of money in gas. So that was the tip. But eventually people are going to stop doing so much ventilation. But the point is that there's other variables which hinder the controls that you might have access to. It's the behavior of people, and that includes staff and children. So you probably know the staff member who likes to ventilate their room, whatever the weather outside, or you know that there's a door, and I've been to a school where there were actual door monitors that kept the door open at playtime on purpose when it was -1 outside, so that all the cold air came in and all the warm air went out. So, which is madness, obviously, but there are other variables, and it's tackling those as well. Think of them as things that you could actually tackle. That behavior will make maybe as big a change as you tackling a thermostat or the BMS.
Thank you. So this is, I've already said frost protection, but I think this is quite an important one to get right as well. So if frost protection, it's more efficient to have the frost protection settings set. So the boiler only comes on if frost damage is likely, rather than leaving the heating on all weekend. So there will be people that will be more more conservative on this, more worried about frost, but generally these are relatively conservative settings. So having an outside temperature of 4 degrees, so if it goes below 4, then your heating comes on, or indoors of 8. So generally that 8 degrees is enough that an area away from that thermostat shouldn't go below 4.
But it's a really key area, this, isn't it, Nikki? Because if your frost protection goes wrong, it can cost you an awful lot of money. And if it goes unnoticed, it costs you a lot more than an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
I know that external thermostats fitted on the sunny side of school, so that the sun actually heated it up, and therefore it's giving false readings of, yeah, it's fine outside, when it got really cold inside. And, you know, if they don't work properly, then you could have the heating coming on inside during the holidays when you're unexpected, you don't expect it. So, yeah. But the caveat is you know your school. And you may have an old school who suffers from condensation. I mean, my house does. And you know that actually 8 doesn't do it, because I'll get mold, and it's going to be a bigger cost to the school in fixing mold if I only keep it to 8. So if you know you need a zone up to 10 or 12 just to make sure the integrity of the building is kept, then do it. You get to know your school well, and so you know what temperatures hopefully you need to just keep it right and save you an awful lot of work.
Absolutely, thank you. And the important thing there is that it doesn't need to be warm outside of school time. So it may need to be warm enough to prevent frost or to prevent condensation, but it doesn't need to be, comfortable in the holidays.
Yeah.
So another thing, just about making sure that you are aware of all of these things. So knowing that what's happening in your school, again, writing things down, keeping records of stuff. So when is your school open, closed? Make sure you know at the beginning of the year when holidays and inset days are coming, whether you've got clubs or events, after school events. If you do have to change the settings for an after school event, make sure they're changed back. Got definitely a few examples of schools that have had a Thursday night teacher parent evening, and that Thursday night has been warm forever afterwards. So you can also, if you've got those external things, so if you've got a regular club that comes into your school, you can put that onto your Energy Sparks account so that you can keep an eye on how much energy you use for those external things. Do be a little bit, I don't know, when you look at it, don't just accept it as oh yeah, it costs £10,000 a year to have the brownies in after school. Actually think about, does this make sense? So yeah, for those sort of core, those additional clubs, think about where they are in the school as well. So what are they doing? Are they running around in the hall, and therefore they probably don't need the heating on? Are they in the coldest part of the school that's really difficult for me to heat, but doing nice like sitting down art project? Could we put them in somewhere that's actually a bit nicer and warmer, and I don't have to heat the whole school to keep them in there? So those sorts of questions to ask yourself and ask of the people that are putting these external clubs on is quite useful.
Yeah, I know schools who refuse to put the heating on for people using the school hall because of the fact the whole school has to be on. To be kind, they do leave one electric radiator if it's frosty outside. So you could do that, but I think you need to be quite harsh, because some schools, it's what is it, chicken feed costs that they give these halls rents out, and actually it could be costing you more money to heat it than the money you actually gain from renting it out. And we just can't afford that in our budgets at the moment. Now, somebody mentioned, Nikki, about portable heaters.
Yes.
Yeah, and whether it's a sensible idea. Now, they're at least 1 kilowatt usually. It depends how you use it, but you've got to be really careful. Whereas if it's just somebody who feels the cold like my wife, then I think layers of clothing is more appropriate, because yes, it doesn't sound a lot of 1 kilowatt, but when it adds up hour after hour, day after day, it's going to cost you a fortune in electricity. So I think the hard message is of no, unless they've got, as somebody mentioned, if they've got a medical condition and it's a real problem and it's obvious, then you've got to think about maybe what is the intervention that we can put in. You can get small electric blowers that can heat up very quickly, or small electric ones next to that person or near that person. But yeah, just spreading out lots of electric radiators is not a great idea.
No, we do suggest that you have them, or again, it should be a kind of school policy, a decision that's made. But if you've got, some people in the office during the holidays, it's better to have something like that than to heat the whole school. But as David says in his comment, it is a fire, it is a risk if people don't turn them off. So it is a fire risk, but it is also a risk to the cost. So we can see very quickly if a heater's left on overnight. If it's on 24 hours a day, that 1 kilowatt can cost you thousands of pounds over a year. So hopefully you're not going to leave it on for a whole year, but it can be a lot of money.
I went into one admin room in a secondary school, and they had not only the heating on, the radiator was fine, they had electric heaters on, and it was 27 degrees in that room. And they said, please don't switch it off. It was 16 degrees in the corridors outside, so pretty cool. They had windows open, but it's like, they said the old story of boiling a frog. You don't notice it. That's what had happened. They'd become accustomed to a higher temperature. So if they went outside, they would be absolutely freezing. But it's madness, isn't it? 27 degrees, during the autumn. It's madness.
Yes. Just looking at comments. So I've seen a comment from Paul saying disagree, size of building dominates, but I can't remember what we were talking about when that one came in. So if you can put a bit more detail on it, that would be useful. And then we've got a pool not in use at the moment on site that needs to be heated up non-stop with domestic boiler in use. Pool back on, this will show in the consumption. Yeah, so swimming pools are big. I think we could probably fill another session on swimming pools, but I'm not sure either of us are experts in it. The general thing is, yes, they do have to be heated 24 hours a day. Getting the temperature right is important. So making sure that you stick to that temperature and don't heat it more than it needs to be. And if you have a long holiday, then if you can switch the heat off for a while, it will take, Rich, it's about sort of a day per degree to heat back up often, isn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So it could take quite a long time to get back to temperature. So generally, it's not useful to switch it off unless it's more than a week.
It's a wonderful facility, and I know transporting kids to swimming pools, external swimming pools, is very costly these days. So it swings and roundabouts. Do you get enough from it, from people renting it out, weekends, holidays? So where is the cost to the usefulness of having a swimming pool on site? Some have switched them off and don't use them anymore. Some keep going because they've got somebody independent actually runs the pool for them, so they get a lot of use and therefore get a good income from it to offset the energy it's costing.
And the temporary swimming pools as well, if anyone suggests putting one of those onto your playground, do question the energy consumption of it, because I think often in the quotes that you're given, it's quite an underestimate of how much energy they're going to use and how much it's going to cost you. So do question it, and if you need any examples, we can show you some schools that have had them before and how much it's cost them. It can be quite a lot. There was something else I was going to say then, I don't remember what it was. Probably about my primary school swimming pool when I was little that wasn't heated. Never did me any harm, and all of those. Right, I think where have I got to? So radiators and sort of heat delivery systems is just, again, making sure that you understand how they work, what they're doing, which areas don't work particularly well as well. So it's more than just the boiler room, it's kind of the whole school around. And then those sort of long, short, medium term policies and targets. So you may have a climate action plan, or you might have a trust or a local authority net zero target. What are those targets? What are those sort of energy budgets that you have to stick to? And sort of making sure that you have that question. We've said this one already, but knowing when you can say no. So having that policy in place that says, if someone asks me for a heater, I can say no because, or actually, yeah, I can say no. I can say yes now because whatever has been met. So just making sure as well, when you're able to say yes or no, having an understanding of what that means. So an understanding of the cost. If you turn the heating on today, how much more is it going to cost the school? Or if someone asks for the heating to go up, understanding how much that costs, how much extra that might cost. So I think we've probably done a little bit of this already, talking about the types of timers and things, but generally our advice is for a normal gas boiler, wet radiators, sort of 1 to 2 hours before school opening, before you need it warm, should be enough. And then switching off again slightly before the end of school. Generally the heating, the school should hold enough heat for those teachers that are left in school. But do experiment, find the sweet spot between having the school being too cold, too many complaints, or too warm, too expensive, and you can use your Energy Sparks charts to very quickly kind of see what is happening, what happened today that was different to yesterday. Have I met that sweet spot yet? Do use that sort of optimum start time if it works, but again, just check that it is doing what you think it's doing. Oh goodness me, running out of brain and word power. And then Richard's mentioned this already, just remember the effect of having a whole school. So it can really impact the temperature when you've got a lot of people, a lot of equipment. It can really impact that temperature as well. So if you've got your heating ready so that the school is warm by 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, you may well be able to switch it off quite a lot earlier. You might have to heat in bursts or something through the day. And if your thermostats aren't sort of working well enough to switch it off in that time, then you may need to add more timings in as well. Make sure that it can come on and off as we go. And just a quick note on underfloor heating. There are quite a lot of schools with underfloor heating. I know of a few that have been advised that they have to keep it on 24 hours a day, otherwise it's never going to work. And it doesn't really seem to be necessary for the majority of schools. And I know of quite a few schools that heat them even with underfloor heating only for a few hours. So although it takes a lot longer to kind of get that temperature in to heat the slab. They're working at a lower temperature as well. Generally, it holds that heat really well. So you can then switch it off. A lot of schools are switching their underfloor heating off kind of by 10 or 11 o'clock, and actually it still holds enough heat for the rest of the day for that.
Yeah, I think the way to think of it is that you're heating for when most people are in school, not for when the head teacher turns up early, you know, for 1 or 2 people, because the heating may be coming on and it will take the edge off. So the radiators would be hot and it'd be radiating out heat. So you'll feel some of the heat. Yes, the air temperature won't be up to the level you want it at 7 or 8 o'clock, but you're wanting to get it warm enough for the 8:30, 8:45.
Yeah. Aha, interesting. Do you want to look at this question, Richard, from Connor Manning about early temperatures?
So does that mean your electric heating is that you have at your school? Possibly.
So usually the cheaper hours are between midnight and 7 a.m. So I guess if you've got those cheaper hours, if you're being told to have the heating on earlier and switch off earlier, then that could help.
Generally, I don't think so, because our schools aren't insulated well enough to actually hold on to that heat. So I think you'll be losing it too much. You know, I think it's much more sensible to learn how your school gains heat and loses heat. It's really important, because you'll understand your school when you've been there a while, that there's colder parts of the school, maybe the ones with the worst windows will lose heat quickly, and therefore how that affects the timings that you need to have it on to get to that temperature that you need for when people are mostly in. But I think putting it in overnight, you know, I know those wonderful night storage heaters. We've had lots of interesting conversations about that, Nikki, in the past. But generally, they're not great. Schools that I've, you know, worked with, they don't like them, and it costs them a lot of money doing it that way.
Yeah. So, and again, you can experiment and use your Energy Sparks charts to see what's happening. So if you're being told to have your heating on midnight till 7, try 2 till 7 and see if it feels any different at school by that point. You know, and after that, try sort of a little bit later. This next question about air handling units, Richard, did you want to answer that as well?
Yeah, so is that an electrical heating method that you can have inside the air handling units? The air handling unit also brings the heat in and out for the hours that yeah I find sometimes that air handling units can be on too high. I was in one school who were generally everyone was cold, but the air temperature was fine. They just had the blower on too high, and it was just getting the wind chill on everybody. So that was an issue. But if you're saying that we can control the heating per hour, that's very flexible, so that you could take the chill off maybe this time of year for an hour or so. That seems pretty efficient way of doing it when you've got that sophistication in your heating system. So yeah, Paul, if you can do that, that sounds a good idea. Yeah.
So the air handling unit runs all day in Paul's school.
All right, gas heating in and right. He's updated it. Yeah. So that could work quite nicely if the gas is only burning for a short while per hour, like you mentioned. But you'll be using electricity for the air handling bit of it as well. So you're using electric and gas at the same time. But it's quite reactive, so you can get it done quite clear. Quite good, quite well. Sorry, I'm reading at the same time as speaking, which is never a good thing. Okay, I know you got quite a few slides to get through.
Yeah, we can always talk about this a little bit more detail afterwards, Paul, if we need to. But yes, so I was just going to quickly show you a couple of examples of schools. And this is probably not useful right now, but oh no, it is useful. But it's just an example of 2 schools that are pretty normal looking primary schools. So they're not like super modern, super high tech. But these are charts, and I will show you in a minute how to sort of navigate to these. But they show the gas consumption over the whole winter period. So it's added up for every single day of the year, and then every single day of the winter heating period. And then and then broken down into those half-hour periods. So we can see for this school here that their heating tends to come on at about 5:30 in the morning, but it has kicked in a little bit earlier sometimes. So it might be that when it's really cold, it does come on a little bit earlier, and they tend to heat until about 10 o'clock in the morning. And then it really sort of drops down after that. So this is a pretty normal looking school, not doing anything, super special, but heating for the temperature of the building, or for the building, for the people in it. And the same for this school. So this is you can see the age, 1896 this school was built. This is a school in Swansea, and again their heating comes on sort of 6:30 in the morning, and the heating requirement drops through the day. So when there are more people in the school, and the school is holding in that heat, is dropping through the day, and by that kind of 3 o'clock, when everyone's gone, or the school students have gone home, it comes down much lower. Now these schools are both in South Wales, so it's quite a warm area of the country. You may well find in the area that you're in, there'll be a little bit more at this end, but generally a sort of similar shape is a totally achievable shape of heating, and I will show you some of these in a little bit. I can see that Matt has said he's going to have to leave. Oh dear, he's requested a meeting, so there might be something very serious. But Energy Sparks have been extremely helpful in identifying potential savings, to a combined £30,000 saving last year. Thank you, Matt. That's recorded now forever and ever. It's going to go onto our YouTube channel. But no, yeah. So Matt's school have been really keen on making every tiny little saving. So it's really nice to have him here. And there is going to be a recording, so Matt, you can see that later. So set temperatures, and some of these things, again, we've gone over these already a little bit, but making sure, knowing your thermostats. I'm just going to let somebody in. Okay, apologies for that. So these set temperatures on the right hand side, these are the ones that are on our website, but they are also the same temperatures as are on the DFE energy efficiency guidance. I should have added a link to that as well onto this slide. So remember that the temperatures are not necessarily the temperature that your room is going to stay at forever, but that's when your heating goes off. So the heating will switch off at 18 degrees, but the people and the lights and the equipment will continue to keep it a little bit warmer. Can
I promise you they won't stay at that level, Nikki. There's just no way. If you've got people in those rooms, they will go up. But it's just talking about that's when you want the heating to go off. And a little caveat on the corridors. So if you're primary school, nursery, and you use your corridors for actual small little lessons and gathering of pupils, treat that like a classroom, because you don't want that 15 if they're actually running little lessons out there as well.
Yeah. So thermostats, just making sure can people fiddle with them? Can you lock them? Can you put one of those clear covers on them? Can you also, if they are fiddleable with, are they regularly monitored? So is it something that you do on your regular rounds? Can you appoint pupil monitors as well? So especially in a primary school, they love a job. So give them a job to make sure they're all switched back to 18 or 3 or whatever they're on. So as we mentioned, that kind of heating to 18, if you've got a school that has heating and cooling or additional ventilation, make sure that you're building in a dead band. So it's not sort of you heat to 18 and then cool to 18. Cooling to 18 will feel cold. So make sure that there is, you heat up to 18, then it'll stop, then the bodies will keep it warm for a little bit, and the cooling won't kick in until you're at 23, 24, something like that. We also have schools there where they have separate systems delivering heating and cooling, and they're all working at the same time against each other, and that's not unheard of.
I have got pictures of aircon, heating, and windows open. Oh yeah. Which is complete madness.
So Richard mentioned already fan speeds as well. So if you do have air handling units and things, make sure that they're not blowing really hard. So even if you're blowing warm air, if it's blowing very fast, it will feel cooler. So there was a school I was talking to recently in Bristol who had all of their thermostats were set at something like 23, 24, and it still felt cold in the school. And that's almost certainly what was happening, was just that the air was blowing too fast.
It's also worth mentioning that some thermostats in the older schools, you might have a convection heater, a blow fan radiator. The thermostat is actually controlling the electric fan. So it's not controlling the heating inside, because it will just be on the heating circuit. So I've got pictures with my thermal camera of the hot pipe still, and it's just trickling heat in if the fan's off. But if the thermostat's saying, oh, I need to be warmer in this room, it kicks on the fan and starts blowing the fan. So it blows air across those hot pipes to get the air quickly into the room. They can be very reactive and very good for big spaces. But generally in classrooms, the feedback I've always got is they're just too noisy and we just have it off. And they just let the heat trickle in, which is no bad thing, I suppose. So there are many different thermostats around schools. There are controlling ones. There are room ones. There are wriggle room ones, which give staff maybe 3 degrees wriggle room for their own room, separate to other rooms, which is great. People seem a lot happy with that sort of system setup, but they're usually the newer schools. Our old schools, I'm afraid, usually you've only got maybe one central thermostat. Check it's in the right place and not near a window, not in the sun. Quite often you find it in the corridor near the hall in our older schools. But yes, some schools have several around a bigger school, and they average out the temperature and work out whether the heating does need to come on to heat everybody. So it's just learning, what do your thermostats do? And once you have that documented, it makes it a lot easier in being able to control different parts of your school.
Yeah. So Paul's asked, what is the best deadband value? And I'm not sure that there's an easily sort of published guidance on this. What will you think?
Yeah, well, I don't, if you think about what temperatures you can really handle, you know, I don't like the cooling to come on until you 24, 25 degrees, you know, and you should only be heating up to 18. But we seem to get into this idea, especially if staff can actually change the controls, where you want me to be at 18 because that's what you said in the heating season. So I'm sticking it at 18. So it cools down to 18, which that's crazy. You know, you want to change the temperature to what you can cope with. And in the summer, you can cope with warmer temperatures. And in the winter, you get used to the coolness. So you can actually cope with quite cool temperatures. So I like it quite wide. So 18 on heating and 24, 25 before you start cooling.
Thank you. So thinking about when the school is closed as well. So schools are only really open to students for about 15% of the year. But it's really common for 70% of gas to be used outside of school hours. So often you'll have a specific setting, a holiday setting that you can put your heating onto. But again, it's worth checking. So do check your Energy Sparks charts that it's doing the right thing. I think we've probably covered quite a lot of these things already during our session. So I'm going to move on to our slides and things. So that's it for our kind of general guidance. So we're going to think a bit more about how we do this, how we use our Energy Sparks account to look at these things. So one of the most important things when using Energy Sparks, particularly for your gas, is to question what you're seeing. So I can see a peak here. What does that cause that? Do I know what caused it? My gas was high at the weekend. Why did that happen? I'm using more gas this week than last week. Is it because it's colder, or is it because something's changed? And so these questions on this list kind of broadly cover what we've already gone over. You should be able to use your account to check that the settings that you have set are actually what is happening. So I'm going to run through a few sort of tools and show you some of these things. So Energy Sparks, these are the simplest, the sort of most basic charts that you have on Energy Sparks. These are our overview charts. And you'll find them by clicking on Explore Energy Data from the adult dashboard. But apparently they're very soon going to be brought back to the adult dashboard from popular demand. Bring me my charts. So even if you have very little gas data on Energy Sparks, these ones will be available. So some of our other analysis requires a whole year of gas data, or at least a whole heating season or something like this. But you can very quickly tell what's happening in your school. So, for example, this school, you can see these big red lines for their holiday consumption. They're using as much gas in the holidays as they are in the during the term. You can see this is zoomed into one day. You can see that the heating is coming on at midnight and going off at sort of 4 p.m. This is quite a cold day. I've just sort of picked a random day here, but just understanding how things change, look through a few days and see how they do it. So I'm going to click on a school. This is a school that I was looking at earlier. I haven't picked it for any particular reason, and apologies if anyone's here from Oasis Limeside. So you can find all these charts by clicking on here. So energy saving opportunities. Oh no, sorry. Oh, explore energy data. I'm going into a different thing. Explore energy data. And this is it. I'm going to zoom out very slightly so you can fit the whole thing on the page. And we're going to go to gas. So this is the electricity consumption, and this is the gas here. And so you can see again, so we've got the color coding here. You can see that holidays are using quite a lot. This additional line here, degree days line, is a inverse of temperature. So the bigger this number is, the colder it is outside, therefore the more gas you need to use. I'm just going to mute somebody because I can hear a lot of feedback.
Is it worthwhile mentioning about community times at this point, looking at this graph?
Yes. Yes, so you can also add in, if you have people using your school in the holidays or after school, you can add in community use times, and you'll get an extra colour code. I think it's purple. That will say these are we call it community use times, and you would do that by up here. I haven't even signed in yet. Up here there'll be a little bit that says manage school. Drop down there and it says school, edit school times, and you can pop that in there.
But can I remind people that's really important, that because we can't reflect exactly how your individual schools work, it would just set the times that you set in the community times, whatever electricity or gas you use, it will be coloured purple. So you've got to remember, okay, what use is happening during those times really? Yes, some community might be using it here, but we might be erroneously using energy elsewhere. So it's used as a way of, okay, I know people are enjoying those times, but you should still have a look to see, yeah, but am I leaving maths on? Or am I leaving that wing of the primary school on? So it's just a way of making sure that you just don't leave it as, oh, that's fine, that's community. It's still worthwhile looking at.
Yeah. So mentioning the degree days line. So ideally what you're going to see is that over the whole year, it broadly follows that line. So the amount of gas you use follows that line. The place that you don't want it to follow is in the holidays. So ideally you want that to go right down. And then the other thing to notice here is that even in May, June, July, and in September, we're still following that line. So that suggests to me that we've still got heating left on in those periods. So it might well be that in May, in June, it's cold overnight, and therefore the heating kicks in to get the school up to temperature for 9 o'clock. By the time people are in, the heating's probably gone off again. And you probably won't even notice that it's ever been on. So just sort of keep a little eye on that.
Can you just click on the tallest block there just to show
on the very cold?
Yeah, click, because I want to show people, if you haven't already done it, you can now click into a week and you can see how the degree data of, which is a reflection of when you need the heating on, how it at a week level, and then you can drill into the day as well. If you click one of those days, you can see how each day is performing. So you can go down to quite a lot of detail of how your heating is performing. Because sometimes at that top level, it can look, yeah, we're doing pretty well. But sometimes you need to just double check all the way down to this day level, saying, actually, that was a cold day. Did our heating and our thermostat really reflect how the heating should have worked on such a cold day? Or maybe we call it a diurnal day, where you have a cold start, a bit like a couple of weeks ago, but then warmed up really quickly. So the heating should have been coming off either through thermostats or through somebody switching it off. So you can really look in detail and find out a lot of information that way.
Yeah, this was a very cold day here. So 15.5 on degree days is freezing. So this is all pretty much all below freezing on this day. So you can see that actually this little peak here is almost certainly frost protection. So although it's below freezing all day, it doesn't get cold enough for the frost protection to kick in until quite late at night, and then it's on overnight. But you can see again, it's not on high. So it only really kicks in to get the school warmed up. So it's sort of low up down here. We do also have meter comparison versions of this. So if you have multiple meters in the school, then you can look at all these charts and dig into it. So it may be, I mean, I'm just saying this is probably frost protection, but it could also be that one boiler in the school, one area of the school is colder or has the heating set differently.
Yeah, I've seen it where one small boiler in maybe, the teacher's area, which is just on all the time because it's just accidentally being left on.
Yeah, Absolutely. So that's your kind of the most basic version of our chart. So you can really start sort of play about with that. You can then also click into different areas of the year or through a few different days, and again work out what's happening in those particular days. I think actually I did look at this earlier. I think this is a different meter. So yeah, let's show you how the meters work. So they've got 2 meters. They are, one's about a third of the school, one's about 2/3 of the gas consumption. And we can have a little look at last week and that day that we just clicked on. And you can see this lighter red. So you can also name your meters. So there's a little on that manage school drop down, there's a bit that says edit meters, and you can give them names, or you can send them to us if that's easier for you to do. But you can see if we click this one off, this meter is on pretty much all day, or this boiler, and then this one is just on for a little bit in the morning. So that's quite useful to know. Next to that, next little bit of slides. So I mentioned before about the meters. So checking that you know what's happening. So this is an example from a school that I did an audit with a couple of years ago. And this is what their whole school charts look like. But when they sort of looked at it from the meter, they had 3 different boiler rooms around the school, and each one was on a different meter. And they didn't realise that some of them were coming on at different times of the day. They just had absolutely no idea. They were sure that everything came on at 6 a.m. and it really didn't. So it's just checking that those things happen. And so on that note, I should put that one after this. We also have a heating control advice page. So it shows what time your heating has come on in the last week, what time it comes on, sort of generally what a normal day of heating looks like in your school. And then this chart here is looking at when your heating is on, when it's not actually that cold, on warmer days. So these purple ones here are showing that the heating was on in days when it didn't really need to be on. So let's have a little look at that one. So on here, it's on heating control. So on the insights page, it'll give you a few little insights. So you could save £900 a year by reducing your temperature by 1 degree. And another little highlight, this is a highlight actually. So your heating was on for 10 days during warm weather, but that's not the worst. It's not the worst we've seen. So you can see over the last week, this is the time that the heating switched on, and this is the time that we think, judging on the temperature overnight, it should have come on. So we're happy with a couple of days of that. There are a few days where actually it was quite warm overnight and no heating kicked in. But you can see that we've said, actually, if you put it on half an hour or an hour later, you'd save £11 that day. And I think there's a little bit as well where we've done over a whole year. If you stuck to our recommendations over a whole year, you'd save about £600 over that year. So that's a sort of nice, a quick way of doing some adding up. And then we look at this chart. So this is the one that I mentioned before. We add up all of the gas used in the heating season on a school day. So it's a bit of a complicated chart, and then we break it down into half-hour periods. But what I really like to do on this is if you pop it into pounds, you can always change the units on these charts. You can then get a really quick idea of how much each half-hour period is costing over the whole year. So it's not like every half hour we're paying £200. Over the whole year for each of these periods of the day, we're spending that much money. So it gives you a really quick idea of how much you could save by shortening those heating times. So if we were to turn the heating off, this is not a brilliant example because they're not doing very badly here. If we were to switch the heating off half an hour earlier every day, we'd save about £300 over the whole year. So that's just a nice little quick calculation that you wouldn't be able to do in many other ways. And then that final chart that I was going to mention before is about that heating, when you're heating when it's not too too cold. So we've got that degree days line under a certain level. We think there's no heating required, and you can see just at sort of the end, at the kind of shoulder periods of the year. So it's just worth keeping an eye on what the temperature's doing. Very often, like this year, we had a very cold patch, but actually then it sort of levels out again and gets a bit warmer. So if it does do that, just keep an eye on the temperatures and whether you want to have that heating on. So another ones we've got out of hours, out of school hours. So this is a really nice one for communicating. So you can see this school on the left have that holiday chunk is quite big. So they are using quite a lot of gas in the holidays and the weekends. Holidays are about a quarter of the year. So this school probably has their heating on as much in the holidays as they do in term time. And then the same here, this is looking at all of the gas use over the whole year and breaking it down to different days of the week. And you see for this school, their heating was probably on more at the weekends than during the week. This school has since made massive changes. So they didn't realise the heating was coming on. And I think this was a faulty frost, not a faulty frost sensor, but a faulty frost or bad frost protection settings. So at the weekend, their heating was just constantly on low rather than on when, you know, or on low, but not low enough, I think. So on the weekdays, it was coming on in the mornings and going off in the afternoons. At the weekends, it was just constantly on. So they've changed that, and they, by doing this, have saved something like 40% of their gas consumption over the last year. I'll show you this on these charts. So out of hours gas use. We've got our highlighted, our kind of top bit of news is that 60% of your gas is used when the school is closed. That is actually pretty much bang on average. So it's very, very normal. Doesn't mean it's like what we're aiming for. It's just very normal that we have a lot of gas use out of hours. What I didn't mention here before is there's also some suggestions of things to do. So if out of hours gas use is the thing that you really want to work on, then here are some sort of bits of guidance that you can do. If you click on those, you get points. It's nice if you do them. But the analysis you can see, so we've got our pie chart. It's really useful, I think, for communicating that pie chart. It's not necessarily something that you're going to look at and go, oh, I can see this, but you may well hand it to your SLT or to somebody else and say, this is a problem. Or your children might point it at you. So be prepared for that one. This is your days of the week. This is like a perfect frost protection one here. So you can see Monday is a bit higher, but it comes down during the day. Saturday, really low. So the frost protection is only kicking in if it really absolutely has to. And Sunday, a bit more because it tends to get a bit colder after the heating's been off.
But again, if you know your school's been used a lot for community use during the weekends, if you record that, and so it may look quite a lot different if you suddenly, you know, you're using a lot more energy because of their sports. I know some schools who do so education classes, use it for the church, an amazing amount of out of school use. So if you can plug that in as times, suddenly it will reflect how your school is used. But again, the caveat is don't let it blind you to inefficiencies that could be happening at the same time in other parts of the school.
Absolutely. And then that's the same chart again, but what I really want to show you on here as well is your holiday use time. So this is not necessarily something that's going to give you loads of information like these charts that will tell you what's going on, but it's a really good thing to do after a holiday. So if you put in place a new holiday switch off routine, then after the holidays you can come back and say, well, what have we done? Has it worked? What didn't work? Or if we've got a new holiday club, how much more has it cost us? So you can see this school last October half term saved quite a lot of energy. They had a big drop in their tariff as well. So their savings, financial savings, were bigger than in reality. And again, you can see summer holidays, what's changed and things like that. So that's a really nice thing to check, I think. Hot water. Now today is really about heating, but it is important, I think, every now and then to think about our hot water. So there are always discussions about whether hot water should be on 24 hours a day or not. No one will meet in the middle between the people that say must be on 24 hours a day and the others that say as long as it's on during occupation times and is heated enough, then that's okay. I didn't describe that one very well, but we do have some hot water analysis. So we have a lovely little button here that will tell you how much gas we think. So this is a bit of analysis that we've done. So this is not necessarily going to be exactly right, but it's done using analysis of how much gas you're using at different times of the day. So we think that this school has used about £1,500 worth of gas during the school day. Holidays about £300. So that's a kind of very quick rule of thumb, is if we could reduce the amount of hot water circulating around our school in the holidays, we could save about £300 over the year. And we do a bit of analysis. That I think I've looked at this earlier, actually. This school is not a brilliant example. Oh, it's not terrible. the difference between if you were to improve your boiler control or reduce the amount of hot water that is circulating around your school all the time, or if you install point of use electric water heaters. So the investment that was needed and then that kind of payback time. So for some schools, you may find that this analysis gives you a really good payback. So it could be, you know, a year or two, you'd pay that back just by reducing the amount of gas that you're using to heat hot water. And for this school, it's not going to be a brilliant payback.
No, but eventually all our schools are going to be going electric, if you think about it, over the next 30 years. So at some point they will be electric heaters. It's just when is it sensible for you to do it? But I think, Nikki, just to add, I think hot water is an area where you can save a lot of money. I'm still going to schools now where it's on 24/7, 365. It's just Absolutely. Because we're so risk averse in our schools, understandably. I'm a chair of governors, I get it. But, you know, 68 degrees for an hour a day kills Legionella. And so if you can sensibly put it on a few hours before you need it and heat up your 500, your 300, your 500,000 litre tank, then you're good to go. And then don't forget, you can put it off quite early, because if you are 1,000 litres, if you're secondary school, that's going to last quite a while, because probably they're finishing the kitchens with it at 2:30. And actually having 1,000 litres of hot water all the way till 5 p.m, well, there might not be anyone around to use it. So you've just got loads of hot water you've heated for no one. So try and work out how your hot water is used throughout the day and what you need to do to make sure that everyone has the hot water they need at the right point. And I'm talking cleaners as well, of course, kitchen staff ever so important, but also the toilets. I know schools who have switched off because they've got several hot water tanks, switch one of the clarifiers off because they didn't need it, and that saved them thousands of pounds.
So this is an example of a school that has their hot water on overnight. And what you'll find, so this is not perfect because they also have frost protection that comes in all the time, but chances are that this little bit here is almost certainly hot water. This is not necessarily the best example school, but I just picked it because I knew I could find it. So even if you are really risk averse and you absolutely cannot go down to the settings that Richard's just mentioned, if you could switch your heating off for 3 hours before midnight, that's not going to make any difference to how much bacteria builds up in the pipe. So between midnight and 7 a.m, 8 a.m, you're still circulating heat, but you can work this out from your chart. So this school is using about £180, let's say £150 for every half hour. So for every hour they can switch their heating off for the year, it's going to save them £300. So if you switch it off for 3 hours every night, it's going to make no difference to bacterial buildup, but it's going to save them £900 a year. So every little helps if you can't go down to just heating in those sort of occupancy times. Now I realise we've talked quite a lot today. I just need to share this little slide here, David, because you're on there. So I've mentioned this already, and thank you very much, David, for your wonderful quote, and you've got your camera on and everything. But this is absolutely key, and this is what we've been talking about all the way through, is don't assume that it's right without checking. So all of those charts will just help you to find out, is my boiler doing exactly what I wanted it to do? But I think so there are a number of case studies on these slides, and we also have some top tips from Richard at the end as well. I'll show you these. Here we go. Richard's top tips, and they go through a whole bunch of different things. So I want to kind of make sure that there is time for people to ask questions, and I know I'm actually very little time, but I also want to just draw your attention to the fact that we have a few sort of campaigns and competitions going on over the next couple of months. So every year now we are running a winter heat saver competition. So we have a couple of heating programs. So these are really designed to be done by pupils at the school, but they do involve you guys as well, because it will be a case of the pupils coming to you and saying, I've done my analysis and I think we can put the heating on an hour later every day. And so there is a £100 prize draw for every school that completes one of these programs. And there's a £100 prize for the school that reduces their gas the most. Obviously, that £100 is a lovely thing to do, but the savings in your gas will be much higher than that if you do it right. We also have a layer up power down day, so that happens during COP, so during the climate change conference in November. So it's a Friday where we encourage schools to switch their heating off or down and then keep it that way for the weekend. And we'll do a bit of analysis. There's no prize for this one, sadly, but we do a bit of analysis and see, who's managed to make the biggest savings. It also, I think, coincides with Children in Need Day. So we've had a few schools last year that everyone came in their pajamas and in big woolly jumpers and stuff like that. So it worked really nicely. And that all goes together with our annual scoreboard competition. So there is, every time you log that you've done an energy saving activity, you get points. Points being prizes at the end of the year. I think it's a £500 prize at the end of the year. Please don't lie on it, because we've had to take some people's points away in the past. And the school that's at the top of the leaderboard at the moment has got 6 times as many points as anybody else, because one student logged 200 things. So we're going to have to take some things off there. So anyway, does anyone have any questions that they really want to get through? And if anyone has any questions that they don't want us to put on the recording, let us know and we can switch that off. I think we've gone through quite a lot of questions.
We did. I've been talking to Paul by the by, but some of my final messages that the future is coming, whether we like it or not. And I know we work from day to day, week to week, making sure our schools are working as well as they can. But at some point in the next 20 years, you're going all electric. Yes, heat pumps are coming, or a heat network. So keep your ear to the ground. What's the likelihood that your school will get a heat pump, or whether the council are going to put a heat network right past your door if you're lucky enough to have that? That's probably the most efficient way of getting your heat in the future. If you can just tap into a pipe, if you're in Leicester City, you can do that in some areas. That would be very useful. But most schools, I think, will go to heat pumps. Leicester and Leeds are both doing it. Ask loads of questions, because it's gone well in some schools. It has not gone well in others, because they haven't changed the radiator system. And you want low grade heat in a heat pump to be the most efficient, cost efficient as well. And that hasn't happened. And they've ended up trying to push the heat up to 50 via a heat pump, and they're ending up with 10, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds extra on electricity bills because of that, because it's not been thought out and designed properly. It's like anything. Things will not work properly if you don't design it. So just be cautious, ask sensible questions as they come up, and try and see it coming months and years in advance so you can prepare yourself for it. And maybe go and see schools who have already got it, and find out the issues they had and how it can work for your school, because you'll be slightly different. I'm putting underfloor heating in my house right now and getting a heat pump next year, and I've designed it as well as I can. But yeah, it will be different for all of you, I think, in a certain way. But it's coming, and it will be for the better for all of us.
Yeah, and Paul asks who's going to pay for it. So that is a very good question. You'll find that there'll be all sorts of different grants and loans and things that come out, and sometimes those are the ones that are a bit more risky. When it's free, you find sometimes that it's not as designed as well.
Yeah.
And
monitored.
Kind of,
you really have to monitor them as well. Yeah, it's really crucial. It's like anything. It's like your BMSs now. You're able to look at how it's running. Well, you need to do that with heat pumps and for heating everything else that comes. But the public sector decarbonisation fund is the big way that schools have used it. But you're up against the NHS and all the ministries and everything for this money.
I think it's not happening this year.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, because
I think the Labour government are deciding what is
basically. Yeah. So it's going to be a long term. It's 2050 we're aiming for. So there's a lot of learning we can get from other schools around the country, and I know Leeds and Leicester have gone into quite a few schools and are having to upgrade all the radiator systems to make them more efficient, because the schools switched them off because they were too much money. So yeah, we don't want to give renewables a bad name just because people didn't design them well. It is the future, and it will work so much better when we get it right.
Absolutely. But question everything. And I don't mean question everything like I'm not doing this, but just make sure you understand, what are they putting in your school? Has it been designed properly?
Yeah.
And have you been given a handover? Do you know how to run the system? Can you run it yourself? What is controlling it? What should you expect from it? Because some will say the heat pump must run 24 hours a day. I would question that, and I question why, and just check all of those things when it happens. We finished on a real
no, but
difficult point.
At the end of the day, Nikki, we are where we are with whatever system you have, and the big message is learn how it works as well as you can, where the issues are, what you can improve on your current system to just make it work efficiently, not in terms of just consumption, but also to keep people happy that they're warm enough, cool enough. So it's whatever you have, whatever control systems, just getting them to work exceptionally well is where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, everyone, for today. So I will send the slides around. They will also, the recording will go onto YouTube, and so you can share that with people if you want them to see your little faces on it. But I think what we'll also do is go through all the comments and things in the chat, and if there are sort of summarised, because there are some really lovely points in there that people say, this is what we do in our school. So it's quite useful, I think, to keep a record of that. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.